Welcome to CALMR. Take a slow, gentle breath. There is nothing you need to solve right now. Only this moment and the quiet wisdom waiting within it. Let's begin. Tonight's story. The Stone in the Pocket. Long ago, at the foot of quiet mountains, there lived a traveller. He owned very little. A simple bag, a walking stick, and a smooth stone he carried in his pocket every day. To anyone who saw it, the stone was ordinary. It wasn't precious. It wasn't rare. Yet to the traveller, it was something he could never leave behind. He carried it through forests where birds welcomed the morning, across rivers that never stopped flowing, over hills touched by the evening sun. Year after year, the stone remained in his pocket. As time passed, the traveller grew older. His steps became slower. His back bent a little more with every season. But the stone never left his side. One evening, after a long journey, he arrived at a quiet monastery. The monks greeted him with warm smiles. They shared a simple meal and a place to rest. Among them was a young monk who couldn't help but notice something. Again and again, the traveller touched his pocket, not to remove the stone, only to make sure it was still there. When the evening grew quiet, the monk finally asked, "May I ask why that stone is so important to you?" The traveller smiled. For a moment he said nothing. Then he answered softly, "Many years ago, someone I loved placed this stone into my hand. They asked me never to lose it. So, I never did." The monk nodded with understanding. It sounded like a beautiful promise. But as the night went on, he noticed something else. Every few moments, the traveller's hand returned to his pocket. While drinking tea, while speaking, even while sitting quietly beneath the stars. It was as though he no longer carried the stone. The stone had quietly become something he feared losing. That night, the monastery rested in silence. The bamboos swayed gently in the cool night breeze. A small stream whispered beyond the trees. The monks slept peacefully, but the traveller remained awake. Again and again, his hand searched for the stone, checking, holding, protecting. As he stared into the darkness, a question quietly appeared within his heart. A question he had never asked before. Was I protecting the stone? Or had I become a prisoner of holding on? The traveller did not sleep that night. The question stayed with him, quiet, unanswered. Outside, the campfire burned low. Only glowing embers remained. The mountains rested beneath the moon. The world seemed at peace. Yet his heart was not. He reached into his pocket once again. His fingers found the smooth stone. Cold, familiar, He held it tightly. Then a thought came to him. If this stone disappeared tomorrow, what would I truly lose? Would I lose the memory? Would I lose the love? Or would I only lose the stone? He sat with the question. He did not rush to answer it. The fire continued to crackle. The wind whispered through the trees. Slowly. He remembered the face of the person who had given him the stone. The smile, the laughter, the kindness. None of those things lived inside the stone. They had always lived inside his heart. For years, he had carried the stone, believing it was carrying the memory. Perhaps he had been wrong. He looked toward the quiet mountains. The river never held on to yesterday's water. The wind never tried to keep yesterday's breeze. Even the fire released every spark into the night without asking it to return. The traveler lowered his eyes, and for the first time in many years, he wondered. Perhaps peace is not found by holding on. Perhaps peace begins the moment we learn to open our hand. The first light of dawn touched the mountains. The traveler had not slept. Yet, his heart felt lighter. Not because he had found an answer, but because he had finally asked the right question. He rose slowly and walked toward the monastery. The wooden gate was already open. Inside, a young monk swept the stone path, each movement slow, careful, peaceful. The traveler watched in silence. The monk smiled and bowed. "Good morning." The traveler returned the bow. Then he asked, "May I ask you something?" The monk rested the broom beside him. "Of course." The traveler reached into his pocket and held out the smooth stone. "I have carried this for many years. It reminds me of someone I loved." He looked at the stone, then lowered his eyes. "I fear that if I let it go, I will lose them." The young monk listened without interrupting, without judging. When the traveler finished, the monk looked toward the mountains, then quietly asked, "When you close your eyes, can you still remember them?" The traveler nodded. "Yes." "When you hear their name, does your heart still respond?" "Yes." "When you think of their kindness, does it disappear without the stone?" The traveler was silent for a long moment. Then he slowly shook his head. "No." The monk smiled gently. The stone was never carrying the memory. It was only reminding you to look where the memory already lives. The traveler looked down. His hand still held the stone, but somehow it felt lighter. The young monk looked at the stone, then he smiled. "Walk with me." The traveler followed. They left the stone path and entered a quiet garden. Morning light filtered through the bamboo. Birds sang softly. The air was cool. Neither of them spoke, At the centre of the garden stood a small wooden table. Upon it rested a simple clay cup. Nothing special, just an old cup. The monk picked it up. He turned it slowly, as though greeting an old friend. Then he placed it back, exactly where it had been. He looked at the traveller. "What do you see?" The traveller answered, "A cup." The monk nodded. "Yes." He poured warm tea into it. Steam rose gently into the morning air. The rich aroma filled the quiet garden. The monk lifted the cup. He took one slow sip. Then, without a word, he poured the tea onto the ground. The traveller frowned. The tea was good. Why pour it away? The monk smiled again, because the cup was never meant to hold tea forever. He looked toward the trees. If I refused to empty it, there would be no room for another cup. The traveller stood quietly. The monk continued, "Our hearts are much the same. When we cling to yesterday, we leave little room for today." The traveller looked down at the stone in his hand. For the first time, he wondered whether he had been protecting a memory or simply refusing to make room for peace. The morning breeze carried the scent of pine. Somewhere nearby, a temple bell echoed. One gentle note, then silence. The monk bowed his head. "Come, there is one more thing I wish to show you." The monk led the traveller beyond the garden. The morning sun rose quietly above the mountains. They walked without speaking. Soon they reached an old wooden bridge. Below, a river flowed, clear, steady, endless. The monk stopped. He reached into a small cloth bag. Inside was a length of old rope, worn by time, soft to the touch. He placed it in the traveller's hands. "Hold it." The traveller did. The monk nodded. "Now wrap it around your hand." He obeyed. The rope rested lightly against his skin. "Now, pull." The traveller pulled. The rope became tight. His hand stiffened. "Harder." He pulled again. The rough fibres pressed into his palm. After a moment, the monk asked, "Does it hurt?" "A little." The monk stepped closer. "Is the rope trying to hurt you?" The traveller looked down. "No." "Then why does it hurt?" The traveller was silent. The monk gently touched the traveller's hand. "You may. Let go." Slowly, the traveller loosened his grip. The pain faded. The rope had not changed. Only his grip had. The monk smiled. "So it is with many things we carry. The memory is not the wound. The love is not the wound. Our suffering often begins when we refuse to loosen our grip." The traveller lowered his eyes. His fingers found the stone inside his pocket. This time, he did not squeeze it. He simply held it. The monk looked toward the flowing river. "I have shown you all I can. The next step you must discover for yourself." He bowed, then quietly, walked back toward the monastery. The traveller remained on the bridge alone, watching the river as the water flowed endlessly beneath his feet. The traveller remained on the bridge. The monk had already disappeared. Only the river kept him company. Its gentle song filled the morning air. He slipped his hand into his pocket. The stone was still there. Smooth, cool, familiar. He held it, without closing his fist. Then a memory returned, not because he searched for it, but because he had finally become quiet enough to hear it. Many years ago, he had walked this same mountain not alone. Beside him was his father. His steps were slower then, his laughter much easier to find. The two of them stopped beside a river, very much like this one. His father bent down and picked up a small, ordinary stone. He smiled, then placed it into the traveller's hand. The traveller laughed. "It's only a stone." His father smiled. "Yes, but one day you will remember this moment." The traveller slipped it into his pocket without another thought. He never imagined it would become the last journey they would ever share. Only a few months later, his father was gone. The world became quieter. The laughter disappeared, but the stone remained. Year after year, he carried it, not because it was valuable, but because it was the last thing his father had ever given him. The traveller looked down, a tear rolled across his cheek, not from fresh pain, but from an old love he had never learned to carry gently. The river continued, without asking him to forget. The wind moved softly through the trees, almost as if the mountain itself remembered. The traveller looked once more at the stone for the first time. He whispered, "I was never afraid of losing you. I was afraid of losing this moment." Silence. Only the river answered. And somehow, that was enough. The traveller remained by the river. His father's words still echoed within him. He looked at the stone, not as something he feared losing, but as a gift. A quiet reminder of a life filled with love. He smiled. It had been a very long time since he had smiled without sadness. Footsteps approached softly. The monk had returned. He stood beside the traveller. Neither of them spoke. For a while, they simply listened to the river, to the wind, to the morning birds. Finally, the monk asked, "What do you feel?" The traveller took a slow breath. The stone feels lighter. The monk smiled. The stone has not changed. The traveller looked down. No, it hasn't. The one who has changed, the monk said gently, is you. Silence returned once more. The traveller opened his hand. The stone rested upon his palm. For years he had believed holding tighter was the same as loving deeper. Now he understood love does not ask to be imprisoned. It asks to be remembered. He closed his eyes. He could hear his father's laughter, not as a painful echo, but as a warm memory. It no longer pulled him backward. It walked beside him. The monk bowed. You are ready. The traveller looked up. Ready for what? The monk smiled. To continue your journey. The traveller looked one last time at the river. Then he slipped the stone back into his pocket. Not because he still needed it, but because he no longer feared it. As they walked back toward the mountain path, the morning sun broke through the trees. Its warmth touched his face. And for the first time in many years, the weight he carried no longer belonged to the stone. It had become peace. The traveller began his walk down the mountain. The stone rested quietly inside his pocket. Its weight had not changed. Yet somehow it felt different. Each step came more easily. The morning sun rose higher. Its golden light touched the trees. The birds welcomed the new day. The wind carried the scent of pine. The traveller paused. He turned one last time high above the monastery, rested silently among the mountains. He bowed, not to the monk, but to the journey. Then he continued walking. The path was the same, the mountains were the same, the river still flowed. The world had not changed, only the heart. Walking through it as the hours passed, the traveller smiled at small things. The sound of leaves, the warmth of sunlight, the quiet between each breath. Things he had once overlooked. He reached again for the stone. This time, he held it with gratitude. Not because he feared losing it, but because it reminded him that love never truly leaves. It simply changes the way it walks beside us. The traveller looked ahead. The road stretched into the distance. Unknown, peaceful, full of tomorrow. he no longer wished to return to yesterday, because today was enough. Perhaps there is something you have been carrying for a very long time. A memory, a regret, a goodbye, or a love you never wanted to lose. If so, you are not alone. We all carry our own stones. Some are easy to see. Others remain hidden within the heart. But perhaps peace does not begin when we throw them away. Perhaps peace begins when we stop believing we must carry them alone. As you leave this story, may your heart become a little lighter. May your memories bring warmth instead of weight. May those you love live not only in the things they left behind, but in your kindness, your courage, your quiet moments, and every step you continue to take. The mountains will remain. The rivers will continue to flow. The seasons will always change. And life will keep moving forward. So may you walk gently, love deeply, and when the time comes to loosen your grip, may you discover that nothing true was ever lost, only transformed. The traveler disappeared beyond the mountain path. The wind continued to whisper, the river continued to sing. The morning became brighter. And somewhere, beyond words, beyond memories, beyond fear, there was only peace.